Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, how's everyone doing? We are so excited to have you all here today. My name is Justine Johnson. I am serving as your moderator for today's discussion. We're super excited to be here having this fireside chat, which is called Meeting in the Middle of the Autonomous Roadway. This is such an exciting time to talk about some of the opportunities and as well as some of the challenges with AVs in cities. And we know that cities are very complex environments, and so really wanting to understand what that experience has been like thus far in San Francisco and lessons that we can learn, especially in Los Angeles. So I'm gonna turn it over to our guests. First, I'm gonna start off with Jeff, and then we'll go into with Saswat. We're gonna do a quick introduction and share with folks about your bio and all of the above.
Thanks. My name is Jeff Tumlin. I'm the Director of Transportation at the SFMTA. We're the transportation department for San Francisco, and we also operate Muni, which is the 7th highest ridership transit system in the United States. I spent 30 years in the private sector, and now I am the steward of San Francisco's greatest capital asset, which is its streets, and it's my job to make sure that the public rights-of-way of San Francisco support the public good.
Hey everybody, nice to be with you all, and Jeff and Justine. My name is Saswat Panigrahi. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Waymo. I joined Waymo in 2016. And I was part of the fully autonomous launch to the public in Phoenix, and now to the rider-only operation that we have for our internal team in San Francisco, as well as our technical and commercial roadmap across our 3 business lines, which is ride-hailing, long-haul trucking, and local delivery.
Awesome, thank you both, and super excited to be here today. I just want to first start off with some news that I saw that Waymo is bringing AV service to Los Angeles, and really wanting to know a little bit more about that. Since that announcement has happened, what has been the level of, just how people are receiving that information at the local level and specifically within the public sector? If you could talk a little bit about that.
Actually, I'm personally pretty happy with how it has been received, and it has gone, almost better than expected. And it's thanks to the long collaboration before the announcement, actually, for over a year. And not only did that deep engagement for multiple months prior to this announcement result in not any of the teams involved being surprised, either on the city side or the Waymo side or the local leadership side, it was also that engagement actually made our plans better. I genuinely believe that, and that is what drives our engagement strategy with all cities. As an example, we worked with LADOT, Connie in particular, as well as others, who looked at our initial service plans, testing plans, and gave us feedback that by including certain areas, we can live upon our stated commitment of equity and inclusion. And that, in fact, has influenced what we did. So it was not just that the announcement itself goes smoothly. When you plan it better, you give people a heads up. It's, in fact, the actual rollout and execution also gets better based when we learn from the expertise that these city leaders have, who know their city the best.
Yeah, and Jeff, I'd love to hear a little bit from you more on, I know San Francisco is a city that has a number of AV companies that have cut their teeth really on many roadways in San Francisco. Wanted to know a little bit about your experience thus far with all of the AV operations that may be happening. What has it been like? And any just insight, words of wisdom that you might share?
Yeah, so by accident of geography, San Francisco happens to have every roadway experience that any car ever encounters except for snow. So as it turns out, we're apparently a great site for testing advanced AV technology. We have no data about the number of vehicles being tested in San Francisco, but we're able to estimate that about 75% of the AV miles driven in California are driven in San Francisco. We are by far the biggest global testing site for AV technology. Waymo, Cruise, and Zoox are all operating there, and there are dozens of other companies competing to get permits to be driving on our streets as well. We also have no regulatory authority over anything that AV companies do on our streets.
Wow, okay, that's a description, all right. And I guess, Saswat, for you, just wanted to touch base on that. What has been the relationship thus far, in your opinion, working within the city of San Francisco, and just wanted to get some insight on that?
Yeah, so I mean, look, we actually, the very first time we tested in San Francisco was back in 2000, much, much earlier, more than a decade ago. But we started testing in earnest a couple of years ago. And overall, I, again, feel like this approach of very honest and open communication has been helpful, not only in understanding each other's priorities and understanding the city's transportation priorities, their hopes and fears about AVs entering. So for example, at a multi-city level, we did a user experience research, which is a team reporting into me, and Jeff was a part of that multiple years ago. But as we got closer to real operation, for over a year, for example, a member of my team and the city policy team worked very closely with Jeff's team in understanding what is the appropriate way to access the curb, because that's clearly the beginning and the end of a user's experience, but also it's a very important space in the city that the city leaders care deeply about. So we actually worked very, very closely for almost a year to define that and design that properly, directly build that into the product and the service. So we're very happy that we've learned in the process, and I believe we have built a better product in the process.
Jeff, what are your thoughts about that? I want to know, like, just give us the, that's from Waymo's perspective. What do you really feel about that?
So, it's San Francisco. Uber, Lyft, a variety of scooter companies were all born in San Francisco. And we've had some absolutely miserable partnership experiences with a whole variety of mobility technology partners. And I can honestly say that our experience in partnering with Waymo is by far better than any other company that we've ever worked with. That said, there are abundant opportunities for improving the relationship. And I really want to give Waymo a lot of credit. For example, just knowing that we would care about the relationship with the curb and that accessing the curb requires a partnership between AV companies and municipalities. You have worked with us in good faith, including helping us to understand how we need to be completely rethinking the curb, because it's actually the only area of regulatory authority that municipalities have over autonomous vehicle technology. So a big part of our focus, well, there's really two areas of focus for improvement. The most important is data. In order to understand whether you're following through on your promises, we need actual data. We also need data to manage the overall transportation system, not just AVs, but how AVs are interacting in the complex system. The other thing I think that we need more collaboration on is the regulatory structure. We are very concerned, based upon our past experience, that the current regulatory structure promotes a race to the bottom. We believe in autonomous vehicle technology, and we want to make sure that as technology rolls out, it doesn't destroy the public trust. And that is the role of good regulation, and good regulation that defines the clear public good that we want AV technology to serve, as well as our concerns about unintended negative consequences and clear, quantifiable performance metrics in order to steer the industry towards the highest public good and to minimize those unintended negative consequences. I think that that partnership is not only good for cities, but is essential for the industry itself to thrive.
I think you brought up a great point, especially you used the word data. And would love, Saswat, I know that you all have, from what it seems right now, hearing you all seems like a strong working relationship. Can you share a little bit about, you all and your thoughts on data sharing with cities and kind of next steps from there?
Yeah, I mean, I think data sharing, as Jeff outlined, there is the fundamental road safety data, our entire reason of entering this space. Then there is, consequences such as how is the city being utilized, how are individual users being served, how are specific classes of users being served in achieving goals of equity and inclusion. So let me start with the road safety one. That's one area, even before any standards existed, Waymo was the first to actually publish its safety standard for the whole public to see. Then in Phoenix, we're the only company that for the last 2 years has operated a fully autonomous service open to the public. Just download that app and go. And we have, without any requirements on us to do so, we've happily shared that data publicly on all collisions and events that occurred in that operation for the world to see. Furthermore, we have taken a look at all fatal collisions that occurred in that area and simulated on how Waymo would have performed. Once again, not because anybody asked us, we chose to do so. So I think definitely we have demonstrated a willingness to share that data. And I agree with Jeff that actually the space of data here, the possible space of data is so vast that actually aligning on that and being crisp on what that is can help all entities and make comparisons actually sensible.
I think those are really great points, and I'm also glad that you all are taking this approach, especially around safety data as well, and also going to continue to push you all to continue to work closely with cities, ensuring that there's a strong relationship so you all are able to really check performance in many ways. I do want to transition us just a little bit, and also following what's going on in San Francisco. I know Waymo has AV operations in San Francisco as well. However, you all are not charging for your AV service. Can you talk a little bit about why that's the case and like what's holding you up? What's going on?
Yeah, so to answer that very concretely, we are waiting for a permit from CPUC that would enable us to open up the service, be it free, be it paid, just opening it up to the external rider base, and actually serve the riders of San Francisco. We're waiting for that CPUC permit. We have been offering these rides to our internal team. I have been in an empty car in SF. We've always put ourselves in the cars first, of course, before having external riders. So I've seen the performance. I'm pretty happy with it, and we're ready. We've answered all the questions we have received thus far, and looking forward to receiving that permit. It has taken a little bit longer than we had expected, but look, we are in this for the long haul and totally available to partner with all the agencies involved.
Awesome. Jeff, what are you hearing from residents and constituents of, one, AV operations and seeing all of these AVs, but also even hearing about charging for service and what feels comfortable, what feels equitable in many ways?
So we're hearing both excitement and a lot of concern. There have been a lot of problems with some of the existing AV testing on our streets. We've had our highest ridership rail line blocked by a bricked autonomous vehicle. We've had fire trucks blocked in by a swarm of bricked autonomous vehicles. And for many of the incidents that we've experienced, most of them we learn about from 911 calls or from social media rather than from AV companies. So we hear from Waymo, we don't always hear from the other companies that we work with. So this is part of the growing concern that we're experiencing from our own residents that we fear will damage the ability of the industry itself to thrive. That until the industry becomes transparent about what it's seeking to achieve, how it is performing, and the work that it is doing to correct and improve upon performance, we worry that trust in the public is being eroded, and that not only harms the transportation system, but it harms the future of the industry.
Yeah. I think that's just spot on what you said in terms of really thinking about public perception as well, and as well as for regulators to think about doing their job in a dynamic way. I do want to also, think about, are there examples that you have, whether that's in San Francisco or other cities, for both of you all to think about, of examples where AV operations work really well with public transportation? In many ways, I often fear that is it going to be this like disjointed reality where AVs are just moving on their own and then public transportation is doing its own thing? Have you seen this complementary relationship between AVs and public transit in any example that you can think of?
So once again, I choose the example of Phoenix a couple of times simply because that's the place where we have had the longest visible track record. So it's not just a future-facing statement, it's something concrete we can immediately point to. So there, for example, we have had a partnership with Valley View Metro for a period of time. And while it's not exactly local transit, we did work with, very recently, for an extended period of time with the airport as well. So we have some experience with these sort of transportation hubs and how, AVs can provide that connection point or the last mile that can actually improve even the utility of the existing infrastructure in that area. So we do see this attribute of a sort of a hub and spoke model or a node infrastructure in a city where AVs can work very well with existing public infrastructure.
And we have certainly thought a lot about the promise of the relationship between transit and AVs, but we have not yet seen a single urban successful example.
That's fair, and hopefully we'll get to see those examples come to reality in really thinking about this relationship between public transportation and ridership and also with AV operations. With that being said, I also do want to explore a little bit about the big topic of equity. Cities are talking about equity all over, and really want to understand what some of your goals within Waymo are in terms of making sure you have equitable deployments. I want to know a little bit more about that. And Jeff, I'd love to hear from you to talk about how the city of San Francisco is also having this conversation around equity and the future of mobility, including AVs.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll maybe pick one example that perhaps is easier to foresee and a couple that we learned along the way while offering service to the public. So definitely the regions you're serving in your service territory, which we test a lot. We have the company with the largest amount of test miles. So there's a phase, if you want a strong assertion of safety, you do need a testing period. So already in the places where you're testing, which regions of the city that you're testing, begin setting some kind of a prior as to where, how much, how many kinds of locations and populations can you serve. So that's an important one. And once again, as I quoted in the early example, the collaboration there with LA has been very helpful. Then the second part is, while ride-hailing does enable people to have access to transportation without owning a car when you cannot afford one, today, if you look at what the price per mile of a ride-hailing service can be, especially post-COVID supply-side issues, it can go north of $5 to $6 easily, and in some urban cores, and that's very challenging. That does not provide the economic inclusion that it should provide. We do believe that if a safer mode of transportation can bring down the cost per mile eventually over time, that can provide greater inclusion purely on the economic terms of what price per mile can be offered. That's one. Third thing, the example I would give, that one that we did not fully foresee before, was there are populations who prefer having a private safe space as the transportation option to them. So this was, when we launched in Phoenix, we had an entire class of users who in the past would not either be able to take a night shift job at Walmart or Home Depot because they did not have what they perceived to be a safe transportation option, and they were pretty loyal users to a fully autonomous vehicle in which they did not have to share the cabin space with anyone else, and they have directly told us that after using our service.
So again, this is an area where we see long-term promise, but probably very little short-term result. In the long term, if autonomous vehicles can be offered at a significantly lower price point than Uber and Lyft, it helps to address, for example, nighttime transportation for shift workers that get off work at 2 o'clock in the morning. It also potentially helps urban residents or residents of transit-dependent communities access higher-paying, career-ladder suburban jobs. But in the short run, we see a lot of potential for significant dislocation, particularly around employment for especially men who do not have a college degree. We're also very concerned about accessibility for people with wheelchairs, people who are blind, especially people who have cognitive impairments. We already witnessed in San Francisco Uber and Lyft nearly destroying mobility for people in wheelchairs, not intentionally by Uber and Lyft, but because the conventional regulated taxi industry was serving so many wheelchair users because we required taxis to be accessible, but the state and federal government so far have not required autonomous vehicles to be accessible. So we have a lot of concerns, but we believe these are all concerns that in partnership we can work together to resolve, though it may take quite some time.
And speaking of state and federal government, how do you all work with the state and federal government on some of these issues or topics, especially as it relates to, again, you in your backyard, in many ways, you're seeing a lot of this activity. How are you sharing that information?
Yeah, it's a challenge for us because in addition to having no regulatory authority ourselves, the ex parte rules with the California Public Utilities Commission limit the ability of cities to actually interact with the regulator. Industry has more opportunities for interacting with the regulator than the municipalities do. So we are spending a lot of time trying to create a stronger partnership agreement with both DMV and the CPUC, as well as the federal government, to get them to understand our real world experience and to separate that from the marketing statements by industry. Also, again, we strongly believe that the right regulatory structure that quantifies and focuses on the public good that needs to be served and establishes a level playing field not only benefits industry, but also benefits the best performers in industry rather than rewarding the worst performers.
I think those are, again, very helpful information for anyone who's a state or a federal regulator, things to think about. But also want to just, I know we have a few more minutes, just want to get some closing thoughts from both of you all. One, what are you hopeful for as we have this conversation about meeting in the middle? What are you hopeful for, Saswat, in terms of operations, not only in San Francisco, but also further expanding to Los Angeles? What are you hoping to gain from this particular partnership, and what are you hoping to deliver to ensure that we really have a liberated human journey through technology and innovation?
Yeah, I mean, the overall arc, I will say, is bringing autonomy is a exceptionally hard task, and as I mentioned, we are in this for the long haul. And what, in this context, I would very much like Waymo to earn the credibility and the trust of the cities that we operate in, because we will be doing this for a very long period of time. And the way we show up in each of these areas as we were figuring some of this out together, it's really, really important to me. And starting with road safety, but also the other areas that we discussed. Actually, as Jeff said, clarity and consistency on data helps the people who want to perform properly by those things as well. So really looking forward to it. In the short term, would like to be able to offer these benefits to the residents of SF. The LA reception has been great. I was in a car yesterday. By the way, thanks to the CoMotion team, we have a car outside. We're sponsors. So have a look at that. Those are the cars you'll be seeing outside in LA and in SF and in Phoenix. Would love to be able to offer this benefit to the riders both in San Francisco and LA.
What about the Olympic Games? Just throwing that out there, What are your thoughts there?
We'll think about it.
Okay. And then, Jeff, for you, any closing thoughts that you would just like to share with the audience, especially as we're having this conversation about meeting in the middle and working with a number of different AV companies in your backyard?
I am very bullish about the future, at least in the long run, of the autonomous vehicle industry. And I believe that since so many of these technologies are being born right here in California, that we have a responsibility to work with industry and to go hand in hand to our regulators around what are the data standards and data expectations, what are the regulatory structures that point us towards the public good, what are the regulatory structures that help to ensure that the most publicly minded of the technologists thrive in this industry. I think if we can set the standards here in California, those will be the standards that are exported everywhere else around the world in order to shape not only the industry, but a better future for mobility in all cities.
So thank you all very much. I want to say an extreme thank you to both of you all for sharing your insights, talking a lot about what operations have looked like in San Francisco and the relationship, but also what we're hoping for in Los Angeles as well and beyond. So thank you both for making the time for this particular discussion. Thank you all for the audience for hanging out with us today. Hopefully you were able to get some gems from this particular conversation. Lunch is outside, and we look forward to seeing you through the rest of CoMotion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.